In essence, EPM Maestro is, as everyone knows, a tool which works predominantly and only with HFM. The element of what we do with EPM Maestro is to add efficiency, time saving, and automation to sometimes otherwise quite menial processes. What I am going to do this afternoon is focus very much on the console, the EPM Maestro itself rather than the Web Symphony. And that's purely because that's where predominantly all of the administrative and the automation elements take place. So what I'm showing you and what you see on the screen now is the Web Symphony. I'm going to minimize this window. Is the Web Symphony website. Now, what I've done to do that is to just show you a few things. One is this is where the support information is. So any element of the change log is here, and using this change log, any releases, changes, updates, etc., are documented throughout this. There are also the updates within the user guides and manuals, but those are available from the download when you download and upgrade to whichever release you are related to. Anybody that's on pre-11.124, the same applies, and you'll see that the difference is in here between the various versions. The downloads is for people that are registered to access that part of the download portal. And the piece to this is that each client has a nominated person who can do that, so that you can self-serve on getting the downloads, getting the information that you need, and that information as well. So the piece there is downloading the software, and it gives you all the unpack information, and that's the distribution methodology that still applies and works throughout. What I do have is a VM environment, and the VM is being set up with 11.124 and version 20 of the software. Maestro, from the icon from the launcher, is here as always, but I just thought to start out, there's a few things that we're going to cover off this afternoon. Part of that is Sarbanes-Oxley, part of that is security, a little bit of process, but also some of the functions that have been added and some of the lesser known functions as well. To start off with, from an administration perspective, in setting up your preferences, we have this thing called global settings. You'll find it in the same folder as the EPM Maestro client is located when you do the installation. And effectively, this global settings manager is the overarching preferences location. So the registration of what it is that people are using, which application is published and so on, the automation and variances to that. Some companies allow you to access the server or Jumpbox or Citrix where you do these things from. Others, it's very much hands-off. So the option has been created here to actually enable a remote access so that you can work from your workstation, but actually administer it on a remote environment. So that's an option that is available to do and to configure. The other is the storage location. Storage location, for example, is where there's a team of administrators, maybe not in the same city or location, and you're all working off the same files. So rather than saving logs or outputs that have been created from some of the routines that EPM Maestro runs, put them all to the same folder structure rather than them being on your local device and then you having to copy them about. So it's just a simplification of centralizing that. And that's both the storage and the log files that are created when you run these things. Email, we'll look at it more when we get into EPM Maestro itself, but this is where the configuration of the email is in order for you to automate and do these things, whether that's just notifications to the admins or notifications to your users, depending on the processes. So if you haven't got email turned on, get hold of somebody within your IT department, ask them to configure the SMTP enablement, and you'll be able to set that going. The task configuration has always been here, and again, it's one thing that when I do talk to people, I find that they actually aren't using it as much. Command line has been there forever and a day, and this is the ability for you to call third-party solutions. Some people have got planning and Essbase, other people just talking to Excel, and other people use other solutions that are non-Oracle that they may want to include in a routine to manage EPM Maestro. So by adding the executable here, that could include also FDM, FDMEE automations, and things like that. So making that command line available means that from within EPM Maestro, you can call it and include non-HFM tools within your processes. The file comparison we'll also talk to, and you can do a comparison between file A and file B, prod versus dev, etc. for your metadata or your rules. And here's where you nominate what type of file compare solution you actually use. A new element you'll see is process management, the ability for you to define a default promote through level. So you can add whichever level you want to be able to set as a default for when you're doing your promotions within the application. Okay, so if things are grayed out or you haven't got them in the right place, traditionally we'd suggest that you look in Global Settings Manager to make that a default across your application. The local environment, as you know, connects directly to HFM. There's no intermediate database, and there's no separate security for the EPM Maestro console and the users that are accessing that. Sorry, while I concentrate just to remember what my password was, select the application that you're going to use and log in as you would to HFM or Metadata Manager or your reports or any smart view other part of your system. That launches the application. It launches the GUI into which we can now start building our task flows. In essence, the task flow window GUI of EPM Maestro is made up of these 6 points of view, or ribbons as Microsoft like to call them, and it always defaults to the home ribbon. Now, within that, I'm going to just walk from left to right and highlight some functions that people may have. But before we go into those functions, just looking at the options that are localized. So the local options here are overriding preferences to global settings. So in order to go through that, there are a series of tabs. A new one you'll notice is promotion. So the element here is you've got a global setting that tells anybody that logs into Maestro what the default is, but you can override that and decide what you specifically want to do as your local process management level in kickoff. Other things here, for example, is the email. So you can define who you want that email to go to whenever you set up an email. So it sets the defaults every time you create a new link, a new task with an email. It will say who that email is going to, and you can then override it. Okay. You've also got a couple of checks at the top to make sure that email only if it's failure or error. So any just normal notifications where it happens normally, you can only get the errors. All right. A simple part to this also is drive management. Where do I want to save my files? So every time I create a new function, I don't want to have to browse to that certain location. So you can drill down or set it up as a UNC link, and that option will appear for you every time you create a new function. Variables is another one of these things that people have heard about but often don't really see or use. And that means that I can create these variables. Most people on this call have come from an enterprise background at some point in their illustrious Hyperion career. And the piece to this is, in the days that we were able to build reports and things, then there was the option to create variables at current, at next, at last, at prior, or so on, depending on your terminology. Maestro, we brought that back. And the ability here is for you also to create it for 3 different elements. So you have variables for scenarios, for years and periods, and for entities. And that means that when you've built a task flow, you may have 10, 15, 20 different lines within that, and each one will be pointing at start January, end December, or start 2017, end 2019, and so on. And you can then set a variable up to say at current. So you change it in one place and automatically updates all of your start or end period and year to that current period. So it's a shortcut, a simplification, and just saves you a lot of time editing, finding, replacing of your settings. Okay, there's a couple here that have been set up, and we can just see that that shows you the calendar date versus the HFM year and period. So it brings those together in that instance, and we'll show you where that picks up during a task flow creation shortly. So make sure you've set your options, created your variables, and when you save that, it saves it to a file on the server. Where that file is located means that if you work from a different workstation or a different, get a new laptop or something like that, pick up that file, put it into the same place on the new box, and you'll automatically have all your preferences follow you. Okay. Any questions so far? If there are, please stop me at any point and we can have a quick chat to it. Bruce, I'll probably ask you to watch that so that you can interrupt me because I'm watching my main screen rather than my webinar page. Okay. So within Maestro Client, as you'll know, there's the ability for you to build, save, and then open task flows. So if I open that, I can pick up a task flow that I've created, and you can see that it just builds a line of a process. Press start, and automatically it'll go through that and run them. Nothing new to anybody on the call. Focusing on a couple of specific things that people may or may not be aware of. Extract and load, copying and clearing are default Oracle HFM functions. But within the copy and the clear, we've extended that to add what's known as filtered copy. So standard copy does what HFM does if you did it manually. It will take everything and put it everywhere. Okay. Filtered copy gives you the ability to actually take that down to a lower, more granular level. So for example, if I want to take data from actual to plan, budget, another scenario, I can take it from actual at entity currency total, so the sum of my entity currency and entity currency adjustments, and put that all into plan as pure data entity currency. Not possible out the box with HFM, possible with a rule, possible with an extract, amend the file and load. So it's a quick, simple override to that. Plus the ability for you to drill down either on year-to-date or periodic view of your data, or if you want to do this in chunks, for example, your accounts dimension, maybe start with your P&L, follow with your balance sheet, pick up your cash flow, do your FX, those types of things as separate processes. You can clip those into the chunks that your business requires rather than an all or nothing as is current. And you'll see that that same thing applies across all your custom dimensions or other dimensions in your system. Okay, the same find, replace, filter, not the find, replace, the search functionality exists as well within that member selector panel. Okay, obviously, where do I want to save it? And if I said okay to that, it would automatically just build with a warning into my routine. The other data function is the value dimension. The value function is for you to extract your data into a DAT file of anywhere in your system, anywhere on the value dimension. So you can select whether that comes out at a currency, whether that comes out as entity currency total, for example. And people use this just as a case study. People use this when they're extracting data that's going into another system, planning, airspace, some non-Oracle solution back to the GL, for example, etc. And that again has filtering, the filtered members, but more importantly, it's got the option for you to select the field structure. And the field structure is where you're outputting it to a flat file rather than having to do a mapping exercise. You can amend that to the format of the destination. So changing the sequence of your comma delimited file to be closer to or to meet that of your destination solution. Okay, so those are a few little pieces within the data element. The rest is fairly binary and standard and hasn't changed a lot because it hasn't changed in HFM. Just from the perspective of your periods, I will say that for those who don't know, we've got the open and the close. So at the end of a period, you can always close your journal periods as well as having opened them, and therefore securing the data input that is allowed into the system. Okay, so that's the data-related things on the home ribbon. The other tasks has a few more things. So everything on the home tab is to do with your data. Everything on the other tasks and other ribbons are to do with the environment and the artifacts thereof. I mentioned when we looked at global settings the ability for you to create a tool to use the compare. That could be Notepad++, various others that people use, KEdit for those who go back that far, and so on. But the ability here for you to compare your metadata, member lists, rules, or individuals of those against two environments. So whether that's a production environment and so on. I only have one configured in our environment, so I can't change it, but you could effectively connect to different applications. So I'm comparing Tot Console with Demo HFM. They are completely different apps, so I'm not going to do the compare, but if you have two, it will give you that side by side, line by line, syntax check. Is the spelling correct? Are the commas in the right places? Are the lines the same? So when you load your metadata, you do it with confidence that it's right. That's not to say the context within that is not, and the business rules we can apply later on. Okay, so that's a comparison. Another one is ICT. The SA community is one of the few that actually use this module, a separate module to HFM, which some people purchased, and we were asked to include it so that you could open and close periods within that from the ICT module. So if you're using it, know that you can do this. In the same way, Extend Analytics. There are companies who take data from HFM into Extend Analytics star schema for use of reporting into airspace and variations thereof. Once you've configured that Extend Analytics template within your HFM application, you can then create this pump to keep the data fresh as often as you need to. We do have clients where they're refreshing that data every 2 minutes, so that the data that they're reporting out of airspace is as near real time as humanly possible. Okay, so that's there as well. We do have these system reports. System reports was also recently added, and this was at the request of people in order to distribute intercompany mismatch reports. So you can create and distribute through automation the intercompany mismatch reports, possibly to a mailing group as such. That's all that that's doing, is producing it on a regular basis and distributing it to the users who need it. If you need more information on intercompany and intercompany process and that type of thing, then I'd suggest you have a look at AMOSCA's Merlin Excel, which has an intercompany module wizard to it. The analysis that happens here for those people who are doing changes to their application is also one of those things that hasn't happened or hasn't been used that often. But it gives you the ability to create a look and see exactly what's in your system versus what's in the database. So this is not going to change anything. It's purely giving you a report but it's comparing a data file. So if I extract my data from January to March and in a year, and I run that, I can get a comparison against the database to tell me which entities and which accounts have not been used, which do not exist in that data set. I can then make an informed decision as to whether I need them still or whether I should archive or delete them. So it's just using the information that you've got in the system against the database and looking and getting a compare report. Here's the email. So I can now add this email and it'll bring up a little pop-up window and tell me who do I want to send it to, who's it coming from, and what message do I want to write. A few little features that have been added to this is what am I going to do with that document? Am I just emailing to tell people that it's done, or do I want to actually append an attachment to that, whether that be the log file or task flow, etc. Okay, also change the number or use one of these built-in messages with a naming convention that exists. All right, there are companies who add emails pretty much after each process within it. So at the end of consolidate, an email goes. At the end of translate, an email goes. At the end of process management, an email goes. At the end of the process completed, an email goes. So people can see how long each section is taking. Okay. The very new, released in this current version, is the ability for you to link Web Symphony with EPM Maestro. This does require Web Symphony to be installed and operational because it's just pulling the information in a report rather than actually doing the process from here. So the 4 keys are these reports which are being run. Now, an element of this is related to Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. So people need to keep information on security. The hierarchy to Excel, if you want to distribute that to all your users on a regular basis, you can. Process management, the tracker at the end of each month end, who's done what, and that email gets sent to, can be sent to the financial controller or somebody that needs to know anything about process management. So picking that up, quite simply, again, it's going to launch you a pop-up asking you which application, where the application is, and the name of the application that you're going to be running this against, current or whichever one you specify. Which report do you want to run? Pull that over, create the report name, tell it which dimensions you want to go to. And just for example, I've created one as a preview to this. It's not the one I wanted. And you'll see that it opens the file. Okay. So there's a preview that there's the matrix on the right-hand side that it's created. So whether that's the export of your hierarchies, the security matrix, that's there. And again, you've got the group and the users within that group as well. That needs to be seen. And you've also got process tracker, which will tell you what's been promoted, when it was promoted, and how it was promoted. So all of that as an Excel spreadsheet will be sent to whoever you want it to be sent to. Okay, and I can email that content out to whoever needs the report. Okay, that's quite life-changing to some companies, especially around Sarbanes-Oxley compliance and those types of things. All right. The other here is the comment. Putting comments into this process so that you can actually display them while it's running. So while it's running, you can actually see, and any comment that's displayed, anybody looking at that process will also be able to pick up. Slightly different, and I'll show you that, is to color coding them, so you can actually use colors rather than text to indicate which process. For consolidation green, for translation blue, and so on. Okay, and those are the things that are sitting under the other tasks routine. If I go to administration, a lot of things that some companies rely on IT to do, like backup, like stopping and starting the databases, like releasing sessions on it, like clearing the task flow logs. And I do know that there's companies out there who never clear their task flows because they don't know how to, or it hasn't been requested to be done by IT. And the more that your task audit and data audit, if you have that turned on, logs grow, the more impact you have on your performance across your user community. As we all know, clearing the task audits is available here. By turning the archive on, it'll actually save an Excel spreadsheet per period, per task, so you can then analyze that should you wish to. How many people consolidated this month? How many people logged on? How many people didn't log on? And so on. How many times was metadata loaded? So again, a Sarbanes-Oxley compliance element is who loaded the metadata, who loaded the rules, when did they do it, and so on. All right. Exporting your history is there. So if you need to have it from a historic purpose, you've got that option. Another big change related to the security matrix export is the ability for you to see your security changes. Here's where people are saying to us, I want to know what changed between last month end and current month end based on security updates. So you can now run that, file it, filtered by age, what metadata descriptions were changed, what members were added or removed in that period. Application A versus application B, current versus a different app. And that could just be an output file. So I've outputted yesterday's backup and I've got my current application, and I can compare what's live versus what was backed up yesterday. Okay. Releasing sessions, Oracle have never been very good at this. I can do that based on clearing down and saying 0. So anybody that's currently logged on, except for me, will be deleted, as in cleared from accessing the system at that point in time. A lot of companies make that 2 hours, so anybody who got to work early will stay logged in, but anybody who was logged on last night and didn't get disconnected will automatically be cleared, and then they'll reconnect when they get back to the office in the morning. Slightly different to that, pardon me, based around application connections, is the ability for you to turn the application into admin mode. That means that by enabling that, you now turn the system into admin mode. Nobody can log into the application until you switch it back. So for security updates, for metadata management, those types of things, or just to take the system offline for any point, any reason, you've got the option to switch there without removing your security and then reapplying it. The connections to the applications, well, there's lots of applications in my demo system, but I can disable them at any point in time. So you can completely disable it, and nobody will even know it exists or are able to connect to it until such time as you re-enable it. All right, so if you've got a training app or a test app or a demo app or a version 16 application, you can disable it or make it admin-only access while you're testing or doing your developments or something like that in an environment. Okay, so that's there. Now, we'll move across to the task flows. And the task flows is once you've built these, you've got the ability to start doing things. Now, the one that I did say I was going to do, which I'll just very quickly show you, was the ability for you to say variable. So take that to month end. Okay, so you see it there, and if you go into it, it's still there. All right, so task flows. I've now got the ability to select which server I run that against. There are companies who create a specific consolidation-only server, but when you've got round robins and that type of thing in your server estate, it doesn't always go to the right one. So you can now enforce which server or cluster this consolidation or process that you're creating runs against. All right. Activate or deactivate them. You've got lots and lots and lots of tasks. Why delete one and then try and remember to add it back and what all the settings were for it? Just deactivate it. But because you've got a team of 3 that do administration, put a comment. The reason for this being changed is, and it will be turned back on Friday. But highlight it as a color. So when they run that and when they get that report, they'll actually see the color and realize that they need to take attention to it. All right, you can number the lines. You've now got the option to put numbers against those lines. And then we've got the threading, the ability for you to add multiple threads into this, daisy chaining your processes to make them more small, succinct, and individual. All right, and then you've got the command line here at the end, the option for you to call that command that I talked about, where you could add Excel or Excel scripts for Essbase or a third-party tool, FDME, for example, into your process. Okay. The scheduled task here is where you want to automate it separately. So basically, you've got the ability here to pick up the scheduled task that you're going to run. And you can run that through there. So external scheduled tasks. So you could bring that into the system and automate it, which links 1 or 2 processes that are external to EPM Maestro into this. Some people use different automation things, and we can bring that together. Okay. Under the manage, of course, is where it all brings it together through the automation. Deciding on which task you want to automate, picking that document up, and I created one I created earlier, putting a comment, who's going to run it, and when's it going to run. Daily, weekly, monthly, but more than that, taking it to the advanced stage of saying I want to repeat this task every minute or hour. For some of them, shorten it down to 1 or 2 minutes. For others, obviously make it longer. And how long is that going to continue for? And when you save that, obviously it's saving it to where you need it to be, where you need it to run, if it's running on the server, and you can maintain it as often as you like. Okay. So that's, in a nutshell, a drive-by of some of the new and existing functions that exist in EPM Maestro. Obviously, from a perspective of use cases, there's things that I would suggest we do. I'm just going to stop, open it up for any questions that may exist at the moment, and then go through those use cases and give people some examples of what may or may not be of benefit to automate or to process in various ways. Okay. Anything you want me to repeat, then please let me know. No? Everybody knew everything. I've told you all the information you already knew. All right, I'll switch then, and I'll go into the example case studies that I've thought about. Right. So from a perspective of the initial element, the traditional first up is. Let me just remove these. Is backup. Traditionally, IT does a backup of everything that is related to them in the process and sequence and orders that they've been instructed to and is documented. For Hyperion, that's all very well and good. It's a database that gets backed up, put somewhere safe, and kept under lock and key. I don't know how many people have ever restored an HFM database from backup. I certainly know that when I was an administrator, We tried to do so, and that was all fine and good. It worked. But effectively, you bring it back and you override what you have because you need to put it into the same environment because of IPs and things. There's an element to that that I can restore it, but I need to have an environment, I need to know the process, and I restore that star schema as you would putting it into a dev environment, a prod environment, or a new upgrade. The piece that Maestro brings to the party is the ability for you to do incremental backups. So updating it from a perspective of all the artifacts. So I can take all the data, all the journals, and all the system accounts out of the application for the entire system. So right back to the beginning, as far back as you want and as far forward as you want. And that means that I've got all the data backed up. So if I need to, I can restore that line by line. I would do that as files. That's one big file. By folder means that I get a folder per period, a folder per scenario. So I now can incrementally back things up. Yeah. My caution on this is you're going to have a lot of information if you've got a very big database. But by doing it by files for all your history, and then on maybe the current year, just do it on the folder so you get January, February, March separated, and then do a big summary of that at the end. You have got the option to zip it, of course. So there's your data all output. My templates, I can back up all the templates from the journals. In other tasks, I can extract all the documents within the system, except reports. That would need to be a separate process, which we could call in through the task flow, schedule tasks. So all my forms, grids, workspaces, etc., put it somewhere. And I would suggest you go all documents, because people have got the tendency, if you allow them to create private ones, and if you only back up the public ones, you wouldn't get them. So there you go. All the documents are backed up. Security, metadata, member list rules. Again, all of those, date and time stamped. All right. Of course, if you're using EPMA, then you need to think about that as a separate exercise. But obviously, this gives you belts and braces to recreate a classic application. And also with 11.2, the EPMA is going away, so you need to consider a solution or a process to fix that at some point anyway. Okay, so I now have all the artifacts from my application, and create an email at the end to tell me that's done. I can now run a lights out backup every morning at a time that suits 4 a.m. or whatever it might be, and get an email to tell me that's been done. I now know that despite the IT backup, I've also got a soft backup, an incremental backup, which means that if somebody during the day says, can you show me what I did yesterday? You can. With an IT one, there's no chance in a long way that you could show them what happened yesterday. Okay, so that's just one scenario. Another scenario is, of course, Sarbanes-Oxley. What changed? When did it change? So you have the extracted data, you have all your journal documents and things. You've got to compare. That'll give you a report as to what the differences were between system A at a point in time and system today at current time. It's a soft compare. I would also say that when you are in Web Symphony, think about using the metadata validator. I won't show it to you today, but metadata validator entitles you to create business rules. You can create a business rule that says, in my 3 entity hierarchies, all base members must be the same. But the roll-ups obviously can be different, or any new account that's created, then the ICP must apply to any account that starts with a 9. Simple business rules like that can be enforced. So when an admin tries to load it and he hasn't met those attribute criteria, the system will tell you, so that you don't wait for the user to tell you that their numbers aren't doing what they expect them to do. So these are all things that fit into a Sarbanes-Oxley compliance type process. Of course, the elements of emailing, the elements of commenting, and the element of change management through the task and processing of logs. So when did things change? How many people logged on? How many licenses have I got from Hyperion, Oracle, and how many am I actually using? You can now provide all this information based on a real example, and also on real life data that you have to hand, rather than having to spend days and weeks trawling through it. We have got a client in the US where they had one person employed purely to maintain a access database of their security, so they could satisfy the auditors and the Sarbanes-Oxley police. So those are two case studies in place. Other feedback, and some of this comes from guys on this call and others, is the efficiency that EPM Maestro brings and the simplicity to administration. Comments like between 50 and 90% of the administrative manual tasks every month end are saved by the automation and the processing that EPM Maestro brings to the party. So thank you, so much. There are people that are in our community that have been using EPM Maestro since 2003. Others not that long afterwards. First round, Carl, Sunlam have been using it for probably the best part of 10 to 12 years. So, people do fall into habits of, I do it because I know what it does for me. I've never looked for new functionality. I hope that what I've shown you this afternoon it goes to bringing you to think about some of those processes that you currently have in place, and also some ideas of functions that that you didn't know existed that you might now have a look at and utilize in your efforts with HFM. So for me, for now, I'll leave it open for the next 5-10 minutes for discussions, suggestions. I mean, I haven't scratched the surface on some of the processes that I know other companies are putting in place using various tools and building all sorts of processes around it, where HFM is just a small part of that within their organizations. So, to that, we're grateful. To Oracle, as in the previous Hyperion development team, we're grateful because they've maintained the API for as long as they have, which sustains the functionality that we've been looking at. And all we're doing with EPM Maestro is surfacing it through a GUI to bring it to you. All right. Any comments, questions, suggestions? And always suggestions are welcome because they drive innovation and they drive new functionality.
Jacques here. No?
Hello, Jacques.
Quick one on version compatibility.
Yep.
Please. I presume this version that you're showing is just 11.124. And just going forward, 11.2.
11.2 is compatible with EPM Maestro already, as is the patch that was released
2.1.
Yeah.
Okay, but nothing on FCC, of course.
No, it's another topic and another whole hour's webinar. But no, FCCS at this point in time, there is an API called the REST API, but that is generic across all Oracle's cloud solutions. And at this point in time, the tool, and I'm not going to use the word immature in the wrong context, but it hasn't had sufficient airtime for us to know or understand, A, what it doesn't have today, but B, what Oracle are bringing out tomorrow. So to write something like EPM Maestro for FCCS would be quite challenging because it would be very specific to a current need, which we don't know what the future holds for it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important facts to consider, is all this automation that you would then lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Other things that you're doing that others might share or take benefit from? No? Bruce? I think he's...
Sorry.
I thought you
I was muted.
I thought you were watching Netflix.
No, I was muted. I thought you'd unmuted us. Yeah, I think very good. Thanks, Noel. I'm sure if people have got questions or think of something after this, they can just drop us a message and ask for a bit of help or give us some ideas or ask where they're getting stuck or anything like that.
Can I quickly pose another one?
Sure.
You may. You may.
Just on your screen that you've currently got with regards to data audit, and we know those files are generally large, and when they output, they create multiple CSV files.
Yeah.
Is there a general use of those CSV files? Do other companies put them into perhaps a different database?
Yes. Yeah, Jean, what we find is obviously, as you know, the data audit files can be large and extensive, especially from some of the financial institutions. And what people are doing there is they're saving them to somewhere that's untouchable. So it's a secure location that no one can go and edit the CSV. They've then put a front end onto that. So basically just an HTML link to that so that they can analyze it. So knit the CSV files together or pointed multiple CSVs, which mean that people can select date ranges to pull into sort of an HTML interface.
Yes, we're using it at Sanlam as our audit control check, as part of our audit sign-off. That's what the task and data were performed. I think that just a crucial thing that Jacques, that and you guys that in South Africa is using, you just need to tick that box at the bottom to swap the data around, because then it's quite useful in pivot tables.
Yes,
and I think in your first document or starting with EPM that I can remember, you've sent out a file as well, how to actually utilize that to your benefit.
Yes.
As well as consolidation processes to show how performance can be measured in consolidations.
Yeah, the user guide has got some sort of suggestions. Thank you, Carl. Does that help, Jacques? I mean, it just depends on where people need to use them. Other people just archive it in case someone asks a question. Yeah, it's very...
Yeah, exactly.
There's not a lot of companies.
And you dread when that question comes, because to go and sift through all that data.
Yeah.
Well, there's another tool that you guys have said, I think it was in your initial guide as well. It's called Agent Ransack. And Agent Ransack is actually brilliant on this, because you write out these files of your security, or not your security, of the audits. And on the Agent Ransack, you can actually write who wrote to that intersection, and it quickly runs through all of your logs, and you don't even have to care. And what's nice about the files that you guys have set up in the way you extract the files, it's stored by year, which is brilliant, because then it can actually show you each and every year. You don't have to open all the files and stuff like that when you use Agent Ransack. So Agent Ransack is quite cool on top of that.
Yeah.
And if I can just add a last 5 cents.
Yeah, go on.
A last 5 cents about this Maestro. Look, in our world, it's like for every administrator, human administrator we've got now another administrator added to it. So it actually doubles up every team. But be careful. You need to train that user how to use this data and this tool, because it can easily you can easily lose a lot of data quickly.
Yeah,
You're speaking from experience, Carl.
it does.
Yeah,
use,
no, learn the hard.
it does use the
Learn
security.
the hard way.
It does use the security as provision. So if a user can delete data, then yes, it can be dangerous. But if you give a user access where they can't clear data, then it's okay, not so bad. But Carl, I will feed it back to the people that wrote the manuals. Thank you. We found the person who read them. I hope that helps, Jacques. Anybody else with any? Just one thing that I remembered, as in Web Symphony, is quick, and it's now in the client as well. Is you need to register it here, so you need to tell it where Web Symphony is running from. The element to this is just double check and make sure you've got the right version of Java, because this will use version 14 of Java, I'm told. So it's probably a very new version, and you'll probably get a 405 error, which means Java. So if anybody is going to update and they need assistance, just log a call with our support desk, helpdesk@amosca.co.uk, and Ulrich, our support manager, is on the call as well. So introduce yourself to him and ask for his help. If you want us to do the work, of course, we'll upgrade you, but we'll also have to take the privilege of sending you a little invoice. So support is there for help, and if you want us to do it, then we can do that as well through that process. Anything else for this afternoon for anybody? But again, just in summary, thank you so much for your time and your support and efforts. And any questions, as always, you know where we are. We look forward to hearing from you. We will do more of these sessions. We're going to do another of the EPM Maestro with Web Symphony for people that don't have the software yet. But feel free to join that and share your experiences with those soon-to-be customers. We also will do a session on Merlin Excel and the wizards that are associated with that. Again, we'll do one like this for people that currently have the software, and then one for people that don't. And we'll go through that. On the 30th of June, there's going to be an HFM session that we are leading with and for Oracle. So tips and tricks on things like cash flow and those types of things within HFM by a couple of our leading principals, Neil Weller and Clive James. But we'll send out information on those with a little bit more notice than we did on this one. So thank you for everyone for picking it up and joining us today. Unless anybody's got anything, I'll leave the call open for a few minutes and then close it on the hour. So have a good afternoon, and I hope to talk to you soon. Enjoy the weather. We're enjoying a lovely, sunny, warm spring here in the UK, while you guys are going through the other season. But keep safe.
Probably the only day in the year that the UK's got better weather than South Africa.
Hey, no. Keep safe, keep out of trouble, and you know this COVID is here for a while, and I hope that everybody is managing to avoid it, but also stay sane and keep your wits and your health and your families out of trouble. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Noel. Well, thanks, Noel. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.